maybe today, just try it. Listen for nuggets. Things like, I got to go grab some lettuce from the grocery store. I'm in a rush. Okay. Can I do that for you? Or this house is a mess, and I've got so many other things to do. Maybe clean it up. Hello and welcome back to the show. Obie, I hope you have a $100 bill in your pocket. I don't. Maybe you have $200 because we got some ladies we might want to take out tonight after the podcast.
Let's go.
I bet I can find it.
We can figure out how to make it work. I can go borrow money from my dad to take this lady out if I need to. We ended the last show talking about how our upbringing and the marriages that we saw have impacted our marriages. Now, Obie, I'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about what you saw growing up, how it impacted you on how you thought you wanted to handle your marriage, and then maybe what that shifted into as you've grown in marriage.
Yeah. My mom and dad did divorce when I was 13. I believe I was 13 years old. And so, I have an older brother and sister. And so, again, the majority of my childhood, I grew up in a home with a mom and a dad. And then that changed pretty abruptly whenever I was 13. So I was a teenager. I was a new teenager. But
A lot of emotions and things changing.
a lot of things changing. I was very much for 13 years a mama's boy. I was a mama's boy. Whatever that definition is,
Yeah.
I fell right into it. At the same time, I did lots of stuff, had a very loving dad. My dad was a deacon in the church. He was, when the doors were open at the church, we were there. I mean, we were either sweeping a floor, putting up chairs, whatever dad could do to serve. He taught us how to serve well. And that was what I learned from. Mom was very nurturing. Mom was just unconditional love, and so I feel like that I was a little, up to that point, I was a little guarded from the issues and problems that they were having in their marriage. I don't feel like that it was just really on the front. I felt like it was behind closed doors and it wasn't talked about a lot. And so, not that it was just a huge surprise whenever the word divorce came out, because my mom for the year leading up to that had been sleeping in another room in the house, and
You saw that. You knew that.
I saw that. I knew that. I knew there was, things weren't great. And then it was just kind of like it was over, and my mom moved out. And from that point until I graduated college, I lived with my dad. And
that moment that your mom moved out, like, what emotions do you remember going through your body and your brain at that point?
I remember being devastated and heartbroken. Yeah. I remember being just not knowing what life looked like without my mom in the house. And so, yeah, that was the way. That was as far as how that shaped my marriage,
Good job remembering that question. That was like a short question.
How did that shape, me? I'm the man. I'm the man.
I'm the man. I'm the man.
That sounded like Owen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what
Yippee-ki-yay.
Owen would be like, I'm the man.
I'm the man. Oh, you're so handsome.
Anyway, I am
I remember that time he was looking in the
obviously,
mirror.
in case you were wondering, she's the woman and I'm the man.
That's right.
And,
Yeah.
and so I think naturally, we're inclined to maybe as men watch our fathers a little bit deeper, especially in those teenage years going forward. So maybe it was by God's design. Obviously, it was by God's design because it's the way it happened in my life. But
Yeah.
I would say I think it was God's perfect design that I spent those adolescent years and those last years at home spending more time with my dad than I probably ever would have if my mom had been there. And so, I mean, we were thick as thieves. We were best friends during that time. I'd sleep in the same bed with them a lot as a 14, 15-year-old.
And your brother and sister were gone, right? They're graduated.
They were pretty much gone.
Okay.
And,
Just you and Dad?
Dad would...
Just two dudes hanging out. What does Owen say?
Yeah,
what is it?
just two dogs chilling.
Just two dogs chilling.
Eric.
Just two dogs chilling.
Owen's their son. By the
Yeah,
way.
that's shout out to Maddie's. Maddie edits a lot of our podcasts. So
Yes.
shout out to her.
Thank you,
fiance.
Madison.
Yeah.
Just we were just kind of two dogs chilling for about 3 or 4 years, and Dad would wake up every morning at 5 a.m. and write me a devotional before I would go to school. This was for 4 years. Every single morning, spiral notebooks just slap full of one-page devotionals.
That's really incredible.
And he would write them for me every morning. I would read them and sit down at the table before I went to school every day. And, so Dad really shaped in my mind what a Christian father was supposed to be, and in those years. And I feel like that my mother, for the first 13 years, while I had her every day, really shaped and molded me into understanding what a mother is for her son, and so even though they divorced, I feel like that I still had a great example of what a healthy mom, a healthy dad are with their kids, and there was a lot of great lessons learned in their marriage as well that I take into my marriage.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I guess that's the long of the short. Yeah.
Is it my turn?
Amy, do you want to go? Do you remember the question?
I do.
That was not a dig. Sorry. That was not a dig at you.
I do remember.
Well, mine was a long answer.
Okay.
So
Yeah, so my parents divorced when I was young, 8 or 9, and I didn't see a lot of love between them. Now, they loved me great. I was my dad's apple of his eye. I was the apple of my mom's eye, so I got lots of love. But I didn't see a lot between the two of them. I felt like they argued a lot. We didn't go to church. I went to church with friends, but I knew that I was both of their favorites. And when we started hanging out, you used to make fun of me for telling my kids, because I've got 3 kids and I tell them all they're my favorite. But when we stop, I say, do you really know who my favorite is? And they're like, Dad. They know he's my favorite.
Yeah.
And I want them to know, like, I had no choice. I have to love you. But I choose to love your dad, and I choose it every day. And that's one thing that I think I went opposite with my parents, though they loved me well, and I'm so thankful for it. But I think it's really important for the kids to know that I love him well. And because we have that love, we can love them well together.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's really good.
It is good.
That's really, really good, Amy.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah, we didn't go to church, but my mom, she showed me how to love like Jesus, the way she acted and the way she treated people. Now we went to the same church growing up, but I was hitching rides with friends, and we had a bus that would come by and get us, and it was really good. So I did get some sound biblical information growing up, and I did get some good church life. It just wasn't a consistent.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a practice in your home. What drew you to church?
When I was young, it was friends. I
was
was
gonna
getting
say,
to
you had
hang out.
some
I was an
great
only
friends.
child.
Okay.
So again, the parents were fighting at home, and there wasn't a lot of love between them. But when I would go to church and I would go to school, I had people to talk to. It was a...
You also had God gave you gave you friends that had
Right. Yes.
very godly marriages.
Oh, yes.
Or godly parents.
Yes. One of
that
my best friends
poured
growing up.
poured into you. You talk about them all the time.
Yes. So the love between those two, I mean, they showed me definitely how a marriage is supposed to be. And they were definitely one of the huge...
I can think of times in our marriage, especially early on, when you reached out to them to ask questions, just whenever we were struggling. You know, I can remember, you know, just you leaning on them a little bit, you know, just for some guidance, which I think is pretty stinking awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome that you had that a blessing. So, was there a time in your life where you realized that, like, I'm going to be resolute about loving my husband well, or was it kind of, did you grow into it? Do you remember having any of those thoughts as a teenager of, like, when I get married, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do this like my parents, but I'm not going to do this like my parents?
I remember praying a lot for a good Christianly husband, for somebody to guide my household. Like, I prayed for qualities. Once I was saved, I knew the qualities I wanted in my husband. So I prayed for those, and I prayed for those for a long time.
Do you remember what qualities that you were praying for?
I was praying for a leader. I was praying for a good, godly husband. I was praying for a loving man, and all the things that he is. Thank you, Lord.
You left out sexy beast.
So handsome, and can wear a mustache really well. I did say that. That was definitely a prayer request.
Wearing a mustache? Well,
yes.
Oh my gosh. I've only done this twice in our 17,
and
16
I love it.
years.
I love it when our kisses tickle.
Do not.
Too much.
Too much. It's
We
like,
got to flip it across the table.
Yes.
You
Okay,
got
Courtney,
to
go first.
ask y'all the same questions.
Okay, what is it?
The question is how did your parents mold or shape any decisions, any just the way you go about your marriage to this day?
Yeah.
You know, how did they shape it?
There you go.
He said it's a fist. Fist difference.
Just trying to keep you in line.
Oh, takes somebody, doesn't it? For me, I was raised very similar to what Obie was raised in the church. Every time the doors were open, very godly upbringing. There was not a day that I woke up that my mom was not at our kitchen table in the Word. I also have lots of spirals and notebook papers of just encouraging notes, and
Your mom was like the best
Yeah.
letter writer,
Yeah.
encouraging.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. But I saw her. She didn't just say, live this way. I saw her do that. And even still, she is a very strong prayer warrior and loves Jesus. And it's a testament through all that she's gone through in her life of going back to the history that she has with Jesus and knowing that she wasn't raised in a very strong, godly home. But it goes back to, you were asking Amy, like, what was it that set it apart? I think once you get a taste of the Holy Spirit and how good it is, it draws you in.
Yes.
And you can't help but want more of it. Right. And seeing the difference in the home lives of being here and going to your friend's house, knowing you recognize that. You can feel that. And so being drawn to that, that's what the Holy Spirit does for us, is it draws us into Him. My parents, I never saw them fight. There was never conversations about money, although my dad would always say, let me go out and shake the money tree. Like he never denied me.
I can remember
money.
knowing that we didn't have one.
We didn't either. We did have a pecan
I remember
tree.
that.
When Tommy
We don't have a money tree.
Yeah, we're not them dollar bills don't grow trees.
No.
When the princess asked for something from Tommy was her dad.
Yeah.
He went to the money tree.
He went to the money
He
tree,
went
which was
somewhere.
in a drawer
Yep.
in his closet,
Yep.
hidden under some clothes,
Yep.
with just stacks of cash.
Yes. Yeah. Anyways, I think I had this false reality of what a marriage looked like because I just thought it was rainbows and unicorns and it was perfect. And so when Shane and I got married very young, it was, oh my, like, whoa, what is this?
She married me for my looks, and she figured out she was gonna have to work for it.
Oh my goodness.
You
Oh my
prayed for
goodness.
facial hair too, didn't you?
That's
You know,
funny
Amy,
because
I
I
am not
didn't
just
have any.
Didn't.
Okay.
I couldn't grow.
It took him 40 years to get
Literally.
By the time my mustache
Literally.
connected to my goatee, there was
Yep.
gray in it.
Yep. There is truth in that.
Yeah.
that. That's so
It was just-
funny.
That's all I wanted for Christmas for like 30 years.
Was it really?
I'm kidding, but
Okay.
I wanted a beard so bad, and it
Okay.
took forever.
Okay.
Forever. I was that dude in high school that had the nasty four-hair mustache. I just let it grow because I was just so happy about it. Sorry, we got
Disgusting.
sidetracked. Keep going.
Disgusting. You had said earlier, like, fight well. What'd you say?
Fight well.
Fight well. Okay. Mark was on the podcast a few weeks ago.
Mark Gregson.
Yeah. And one thing when I was working at Heartlight that he would often tell families is when you struggle because you're going to struggle well.
Right.
And that is always on the forefront of my mind. I remember when we first got married, we were living at married housing at
At the college, ETBU.
Yeah. And we had not been married long at all. And we had probably our first falling out.
Real fight. Mm-hmm. Real fight.
And I said divorce. And you lost your mind
I did.
on me.
I remember
And
this.
you said, if that word ever comes out of your mouth again, consider it done.
I don't know if I said that.
Oh, yes, it was. It was
Well,
very.
Just don't ever say it ever.
No, he was like, remove it from your vocabulary. And that was a pivotal moment at the very beginning of our marriage that was off the table.
Yeah.
It was never an option. And so as
You're
we
not
had-
getting out of this thing alive, girl.
So cool though that you recognize that, Shane, like right in that moment at such a young age. This is forever.
Right.
We were 21 and 20.
That's
Yeah.
I mean, wow. That's cool.
And that, like, testament to my parents, too, that's probably something I heard from them.
yeah.
Like,
Right.
I never heard them say that word.
Yeah.
Ever. I would hear my aunts and uncles say, jokingly, I'm going to
Right.
keep doing that. We're going to get a divorce.
Right, right.
And it always rubbed me wrong. Like, do you not know that, like, this needs to be forever? I remember thinking that as a teenager.
No, but I can remember thinking, okay, if that's off the table, we got to work through. At that moment, it was just like, oh gosh, where are we going to get money? We have no money. We're broke young kids, and you're still in college, and I don't have a job, and I just quit college, and we are living on a prayer and love.
That's it. So how like your parents' relationship? You mentioned you didn't see certain things. You did see certain things. How did that shape coming into the marriage for you and what you thought about it? How you dealt that first big argument? How you dealt with that?
I think at first I was like, if I can, it was almost like a power thing for me. Like, if I can have control over that, then I felt like I had some control in the marriage. When in reality, I don't feel like either one of us had control. It was just like
Yeah, we don't.
survival.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, once you set the foundation and the basis that divorce is not an option, no matter what, I go back to January 1st, 2005 of us standing on the stage when we said our vows to each other. And it was like, through good times, through bad times, through rich times, through poor times, through sickness, through health. And I've gone back through over the last 20 years of our marriage, and I'm like, okay, the Lord was so merciful and provisional then of like, this is a hard time. He knew 20 years ago this was going to be a moment that we're going through. And I had to say out loud in front of everyone that I loved and loved me, I vow to be loyal to you, to stick it out, to be committed to you. And I mean, I feel like that is what carries me through. Is like, I've made a commitment, not just to you, but to the Lord.
Yeah. And that's a bigger one, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
One of the things that I think about, like you and what we've been through, and if kids are watching this, I'm about to talk about sex. So if you want to turn it off,
That was off limits.
well, you don't have to talk about it.
I'm just kidding.
But you, well, I'll say in general, our generation was. I remember True Love Waits, and really all I remember hearing from True Love Waits was just like, don't do it, it's bad. Although I think there was some other teaching in there, the predominantly what came across as a student was it's off limits.
That was pounded into our heads.
Yeah.
I feel like the majority of our
Instead
of our
of,
lives.
Right.
it's a beautiful thing between a husband and wife.
Yeah.
Right.
And so
that was always secondary or
Yeah.
third. You know, it's like
Don't do it.
first
Yeah.
is
just don't do it.
It's not good. It's not. Don't
Yeah.
do it.
Right.
you might go to hell.
yeah.
if you have sex
okay, I
before
had the
you-
same
You might
image.
die. You
Yeah.
might die in the act.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just was very legalistic minded. It was very, it was very
Sorry.
legalistic minded. Our youth pastor says this all the time. Your body may be a virgin, or your, what?
It's funny. I think it's funny.
He thinks it's funny. So like your,
He'll say the word
He will
vagina.
say the
Your
word.
vagina might be a virgin, but your
Okay.
hand ain't.
your hand isn't, or your mind isn't. And I think
So
that is.
different parts of your body can be.
That's
No,
it.
no, he's saying like it's all the same.
But going back to True Love Waits, it was beat in our brains. If you do this, it's wrong. Well, on our honeymoon from the drive from Longview, Texas to Dallas, Texas,
Just
it was
2
a
hours.
sob fest.
She cried the whole way, and I'm like, oh, are you okay? Like it's supposed to be
mean,
the happiest moment of our life, and you're crying 2 hours straight, bawling.
I was debilitated
Her
with fear.
emotions. I was about to say it was fear.
Yes.
It was,
Yeah.
this has been wrong my whole
Exactly.
life.
Thank
This-
you.
You know.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
as a dude, that's easier to overcome
Without
because
a
it's like,
doubt.
okay, switch flipped. We get to do
It's
it. now.
on.
it
Yeah,
wasn't
that's right.
flipping. None of
This
it was
thing they've been
flipping.
telling me I can't do, I can do it now.
Now, as many times as I want.
That's right, yeah.
Every day.
Every day, a couple of times a day.
That's the that's the
at your
misperception. That
I've got somebody calling.
is your mom calling you.
No.
Oh, gosh.
So
That's so
that was
funny.
honestly something that was hard for us
I would agree.
to overcome
Yeah.
in marriage.
I would agree. I would absolutely agree. And that has allowed me to have very open conversations with our kids way earlier, or even at all, because I didn't have those conversations. Those weren't
Yeah.
spoken about. And so what I said between the break is if we aren't having those conversations, someone is, whether your child has a social media account or they're watching YouTube or even walking down the halls of a private or a public school. Your kids are hearing these conversations. And if we, as believers and Christians, are upholding ourselves to the values that God has for us and the standards, we have to have these hard conversations with our kids, because we can give them the truth and what God's word says and not what they're going to hear from the world.
That's exactly right. And
Yeah.
they're gonna hear it.
They are.
Yeah, I
So
remember.
whose voice is louder?
That's it.
Right.
Right.
You know, you had something?
Oh, I was just going to say, I remember having that conversation with Andrew, and he was young because I was pregnant,
Yeah.
and he was 10, and I went through everything. And one of my proudest moments as a mom was he was like, so is that why there were 2 of every animal on the ark?
I mean,
and I'm like, yes, son, that's why. But it was
cool.
Yeah.
a reproduct, and it went to biblical. I was
Yeah.
just like, okay, this is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the strange questions came. But
Yeah.
that was the first one. And
Yeah.
I was really excited.
I
Sorry.
think it's super interesting how all of our parents, all broken, all had their struggles. Led us, molded us to a degree, to where we stand today. And we think about how important of a responsibility that we have for our kids to try and help them to experience the same what we call, what we consider healthy marriages that we have. I'm so thankful that God has been so faithful,
Yeah.
and blessed us, just gosh, so much. But another reasons that marriage fail is, spiritual and emotional like immaturity, which kind of goes back to a lot of the things that we mentioned in the beginning of selfishness and entitlement. And I think that in this day and age, you hear so many people, when they talk about, we work with the young adults at the church, and y'all have been in the same group, and we hear about soulmates, and we hear about finding that perfect person for us, and that doesn't exist, okay, in my mind. And I don't think that that's what the Bible teaches. I think that so many people believe that they're looking for a soulmate, or they're looking for this perfect match for them, someone to complete them, or
like did you think when you got married that a lot of your problems were going to be solved?
Oh yeah, I did. Absolutely. Like that's right. Yeah, and
Just like getting saved, right? You think all of your problems
I know.
are going to
That's
go
good.
away.
That's
It's a
right.
misconception.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
The
you mentioned earlier, like, I'm going to have sex every night. Like, I thought that was going to solve some of my problems.
Exactly.
It's not going to happen.
That's right.
Wait,
and-
it's not going to happen, or it's not going to solve your problems.
Both.
And we didn't get to Shane's.
Yeah.
We
We
did.
need
Yeah.
to circle
We
back
did.
around to
Good
that.
job.
I'm
We'll
very
finish what you're.
Well, I
Sorry.
just wanted to say that looking to another human as your soulmate or to complete you, Christ says that's like idolatry. The Christian view on that is that
He's already
we are-
handled that.
We're searching for the fulfillment that we should be seeking in Him. In this person
Right.
to fix our problems and to complete us. And it's setting our marriage up for failure,
Right.
because that individual that you think is going to complete you or be your soulmate, they're never going to be able to live up to the expectation that God holds,
That's true.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's really important that when we're speaking into our kids, you're never going to find someone who's not broken. You're never, I don't care if your parents raised you in the perfect marriage.
Right.
They did a great job of hiding that their marriage wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact is that they're all imperfect. We're imperfect people, and we're just trying to figure out how to get through all this brokenness and imperfection
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. And the end goal is to be more like Christ.
Right.
The sanctification, the refining, and circling back to the parallel of the bride of Christ in our marriage and that relationship. What would you say for you growing up was your...
I'll come back to that. I want to go to what you're saying about we don't necessarily have a soulmate. I think, God may have somebody picked out for us, right?
Right.
That's supposed to sharpen us. In the last podcast, we talked a lot about that sharpening, and those conflict moments are designed to grow a relationship with Him. It's a tangible, right in front of you. I got to deal with this. And then, learning how to deal with conflict that we have in our own life that keeps us separated from God. But also, on a funnier note,
Oh, jeez.
if a good-looking woman decides to pursue you as a man before you're married, you're most likely going to give her your attention. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's this one. I think God tells women who their soulmates might be, but men are just like, all right, who's out there. So, anyways, if you're a dude, you know what I'm talking about.
Just wait for your wife to come tell you that
That's right.
you're supposed
My
to
wife
be the...
told me.
Yeah.
I did.
I was laying in bed, 20 years old. Last year, I was a junior in college at that point, and she said, we weren't engaged yet. If you're not going to marry me, I'm going to go ahead and start looking for somebody else. And at that point, she was serious. She's dead.
We were not laying in bed.
I was laying in bed.
Okay.
I remember where I was, laying in bed in my room. You were
Okay.
not there. We were on the phone.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm like, where were we? Okay.
Yeah. And I remember thinking in that moment, I don't want to get married. I'm not ready. I don't feel like you are ready, but I know I'm never going to find a woman like this.
Right.
So suck it up, Buttercup. I'm so blessed. And the older I get, the more the more I can recognize and realize how blessed I am to have the parents that I have. My dad, his parents were very faithful to each other. He grew up in church. My grandpa, one of the pillars of my faith, loved Jesus. He treated us, his grandkids, different than he treated his own kids, which was a blessing that he did that, because my dad grew up in a pretty tough. He was tough on him, real tough. Like, man's man.
Yeah.
You're gonna go get a job when you're 13 and ride your dirt bike to the dairy farm. And he wasn't like that with us. And he learned, and the Lord just crafted him.
He figured out how he didn't want to be from his father.
Right, huge pillar in all of his grandkids' faith. So my dad took that and took it to the next level. My mom grew up she had a pretty rough childhood, and she went through a lot of hard things, and was kind of tried to save her younger siblings from what she went through as much as she could. And she decided that she wanted to run from that and do something different. So both of them were on the same page on how they wanted to raise us, what kind of marriage they wanted to have, and showed an example, the best one that they knew how, which was incredible. Now they fought hard sometimes, because we're all selfish humans.
That's right.
And they continued to fight and grow closer, but they loved each other well. We saw that too. We saw affection. And there was no question. Like, if they were going out together, and they still are,
that's awesome.
and they continue to show us that example. And I'm so thankful. I realize how blessed my brother and I were to see that type of marriage, where it's like, no matter what, we're not going to give up. We're not going to give up on this thing, and we're going to show our boys, sometimes the best of us, sometimes the worst of us, but we're always going to come back together. Every day, I don't think about it every day, but I think about it a lot.
Yeah.
Just how, I'm thankful I didn't have to go through what you guys went through, but I'm also thankful that you guys went through that, to shape who you are, and then the friends that we've become, and how, like, all of our lives have intertwined over the past 4 years to bring out the best of each other. And that comes from our relationship with Jesus and our relationship with other people, how we were molded. Generational cycles are real, and that's why we're talking about them, is that if we don't show the people in our lives who Christ is, like real,
Right.
the good and the bad. There's no bad of Christ, but I think you understand what I'm saying. It's like the good and the bad of humans, and how Christ can change that.
Right.
And be real with our kids, because those are the people that we have the opportunity to disciple and lead the most. And we have such a huge responsibility as a husband and wife and as parents to just be open and real with the people closest to us.
We're all so blessed, and I think if I was going to leave one kind of nugget, we've talked a lot about how our spiritual relationship with Christ is so paralleled with our emotional marriage, our physical marriage with our spouse. And I think about, what does Christ call us to do in relationship to our relationship to Him? And I feel like serving Him is what He wants us to do. He wants us to be His hands and feet. He tells us to love Him and to love others. And I think about, just some practical things that we can do and encourage other people that may be young in their marriage and maybe, working through some of these moments of spiritually and emotionally maturing into being able to fight well, serve your spouse.
It's a way that you can serve the Lord.
Yes.
By serving and loving your spouse.
That's right.
Is an act of worship. By serving and loving your spouse is an act of worship. And there were some times in our marriage, I can remember one time specifically, we had just had a moment that I was like, I don't know that we're coming back from this. And a friend of mine at that time had come over, and she was really trying just to encourage me through it. And she was like, one way that we can serve the Lord is daily putting our heart, literally, it's like a sacrificial offering of like, I am serving my husband. He may hurt me. He may do things that are hard. But every day, as an act of worship to the Lord, offer yourself sacrificially to your husband. And this is not like a beat your wives down. This is not like you take advantage of me. This is me serving the Lord. And in a way of serving the Lord, I can sacrifice my feelings, my desires, my wants, my wishes, all of the list of what Shane needs to be. I can sacrifice all of those things because I am worshiping the Lord in my sacrificial way.
That's awesome. I think when our marriage started growing the most, one of the moments I remember is when you decided to let go of me, of thinking and trying to control
Right.
my actions.
Yeah.
A practical way, we're talking about practical, to serve your spouse is just, maybe today, just try it. Listen for nuggets. Things like, I got to go grab some lettuce from the grocery store. I'm in a rush. Okay. Can I do that for you? Or this house is a mess, and I've got so many other things to do. Maybe clean it up,
Those
or
little
hire somebody
nuggets.
to clean it up. Or I got to run and pick up the kids from school. This is not mean like you have to like put everything that you're doing aside, but listen for those little nuggets. They're not asking you to do those things. It's just a nugget of something that you could do that would mean a lot for them, to them.
I think our natural inclination is to really, just as humans, is to focus on our weaknesses and focus on other people's weaknesses. And like, be intentional about focusing on your spouse's strengths instead of their weaknesses. It's like
good.
when you're looking at, if all you can really intentionally focus on is their strengths, man, what's that going to do for your marriage? You know, I mean, any time that that I've been intentional and that Amy's been intentional about pointing out areas that she feels like I'm growing or that I did well, just in any moment in time, it's like inspiration.
Builds you up.
Yeah, it's like let's do this.
We just hit a new level.
Yeah.
On
So to
Candy
the person to the person who is struggling because their spouse isn't doing what they think needs to happen, what's some encouragement to them?
Pray for your spouse.
Prayer.
Absolutely.
Amy,
Serve them.
Amy talks all the time and just she lets me know that she's praying for me, and I just think that's so huge. Not just for me, but I think for her. You know, knowing that we're praying for each other. You know, praying for Satan to flee. You know, and for any bondage that we're experiencing to be lifted. You know, and
Temptations, just keep them away. Like, there's so many things.
Yeah.
Just praying for, lots of good prayers.
yeah.
Yeah.
what I
And
would
then
say.
I'll say, hey, how are you praying for me? Because I need this.
Yeah.
I need this.
That's good.
But if you're with a spouse that doesn't pray,
Right.
or if you're in a completely different
Play spiritually.
place spiritually, seeking some counsel too.
Yeah.
Because it is important to pray, but you've got to have that person you can talk to. And if your spouse isn't that person, you need somebody that is strong and rooted in Christ
Yeah, that's a
to
great
help
point.
guide you in the right direction, not to guide you the other way,
Yeah.
but to guide you in
The wise
Christ.
counsel.
We
Yeah,
need
the wise
to
counsel.
learn about what Christ teaches about relating to our spouse. Like we need to know what the Bible says about relating to our spouse. And if we don't know that, it's difficult. I feel like I'm not saying that there are marriages that aren't healthy and great that are not, Christians, but I feel like that the framework is there. The Bible is the tool for us to go to to learn what Christ teaches and how that we are relate to our spouse. And so praying for them, learn what Christ is teaching us. I feel like those are just practical things that we can do to grow and nourish that relationship that we have with our spouse.
It may take you saying I'm sorry today. Even when you don't feel like you have anything to be sorry for, it's that humbling, that taking like the lesser, lowering yourself. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry that I made you feel this way. Be the first to say I'm sorry. It may be like it that may break the cycle of dysfunction.
Ammo in the pockets.
Yeah.
Taking a back seat.
Yeah.
It's more impactful for a man to say he's sorry to his wife because we're prideful. Men typically are prideful, and it means more to them. So maybe you are right. And dudes out there, even if you feel like you're not wrong, because so many of our justifications for arguments are, I know I'm right, without shadow of a doubt. Like
Who cares?
Who
Who cares?
It don't matter between you and your woman.
You're the only one that cares.
That's right.
I care.
Yeah.
So
I think we have to let that go a lot of times. And if there's disconnection between you and your wife, or your wife and your husband today, start out saying I'm sorry. Look for a way to serve them. Because that's what love is. All right, appreciate y'all joining us today. What do I say? Hit the buttons at the bottom. Help us reach more people for Jesus. Go kick the day in the face, and we'll catch you on the next one.